Hi everyone, this is Blake Anderson and I'm here in Toronto, Ontario, and today we're shooting this video to get a bunch of gimbal shots with my model here, Carolina. I'm going to show you how I created this video and walk you through each step of the videos. I'll walk you through the basic concept in pre-production and then walk you through how I actually shot the short clip that I posted to Instagram. And then I also talk about my post-production, what kind of workflow do I typically use for something like this. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through each step of this project that I created for Instagram. It's a very quick 15-second video, so it doesn't capture a lot of time, but I really wanted to capture the model's different angles using kind of a more of a 90s vibe. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks and have a great day.
Walk you through how to create an Instagram story that's both engaging, and I'm going to walk you through the pre-production, production, and then post-production in terms of my video workflow. So in terms of the apps that I use primarily in my pre-production, I would say that Whisper and ChatGPT are where I usually first record the audio that I like, the concept of the video. Whisper app on the iPhone allows you to record your voice up to 15 minutes, and then it uses the algorithm of AI to generate your dictation into readable paragraphs. And then you can use those readable paragraphs. You can do a fancy workflow, and I'll put in a link in the description in terms of a video I created about how to use these different apps together. In this video, I just want to describe that typically what I'll do is I might record my voice in terms of the dictation into Whisper app, and then using that dictation, the Whisper app will generate paragraphs into several paragraphs, and then using that I can actually forward it to an email and forward it to my email, and then use this app called Drafts that allows me to basically have that dictation into my notes. And then once I have that into my notes, what I do is I typically will copy and paste it into ChatGPT. But before that, usually I'll read it and ensure that what I want to say in terms of the creative brief or my concept of the video, that I articulate that in writing. And obviously when we dictate to ourselves and we use AI, it can generate, I think, a really good head start. But I think obviously refining it even further by my own thoughts. Usually I'll add maybe an additional piece in terms of kind of what I'm going for in terms of the video that I want to create in terms of creative brief. And then ChatGPT will usually give me a pretty good idea. And usually when I'm writing to ChatGPT, I'll say use a lot of my same words, because I do find that it can have a lot of creative control sometimes over the output. But if you're very, you give it the right prompts and I think are very detailed in what you're looking for, I think it does usually a pretty good job. So those are the two primary apps that come up in terms of brainstorming and coming up with the basic concept behind the video. Some videos aren't obviously that, maybe I'm not always doing a creative brief if it's a personal project or it's just something off the cuff. Sometimes if I'm putting more intention into a video, I definitely will, especially if there's actresses or models, then I want to ensure that, I'm kind of more obviously intentional with what I'm after in terms of the pre-concept and, what kind of motion or vision am I looking for in terms of the different areas. I'm part of this course actually in terms of motion science, and a part of that is Cameron. He's one of the leaders of that motion science and motion design, and his workflow is that he usually pulls from Instagram and Pinterest, and I'll leave a link in the description to his Pinterest, but I also use Instagram. When I'm coming across something that inspires me, I'll save it to the Instagram saved kind of feature they have, and then I'll use those images. I'll pick one and I can use it as kind of inspiration or reference material. And this kind of leads me into the next few apps that I use in my pre-production workflow, and that is Eagle, the Eagle software. Eagle software allows you to organize your references and your visuals, and it does a really great job of allowing for tagging and different search functions and different ways of viewing your assets and your visuals. And so this is where I'll store some of, like I mentioned earlier, some of my Pinterest or Instagram inspiration, and so I'll upload that into the Eagle software, and then that allows me to kind of organize my inspiration for a project in Eagle. And the limitation that I found early on in my videography journey is just realizing in the Finder, it's obviously okay in terms of viewing sometimes your assets, but when you're in the creative workflow, you typically want to, one, kind of understand what asset you're dealing with and working with, and I guess there's this notion, right, of pruning maybe before you're creating a project. So Eagle will allow you to do that. It'll allow you to kind of refine perhaps the assets that you're going for and that you envision for the project, and that could be based off of the reference material that you can use from Pinterest or from Instagram. So Forklift is another app on the Mac, and Forklift, there's a lot to it, I guess, in terms of the app. It allows you to do various features. I love the fact that you can have two windows connected. But what Forklift also allows you to do is allows you to view your assets, like I was saying earlier, in terms of using Eagle. So I like to use that over the Finder, but sometimes I'm obviously working in the Finder as well, Mac's Finder. And another app is ScreenFloat. So ScreenFloat is a screenshot app, and it allows you to quickly take screenshots on your Mac. And the whole notion is that you can create a float window. And what I use this feature and app for is typically I will be tagging my assets, and it's similar to Eagle in some sense, but it's more a storage of your assets or your screenshots, and allows you to tag. So sometimes if I'm working quickly on a project, I might take a few screenshots and use tags to kind of organize the project. So in terms of the production, in this video I use my Sony A7IV, and I like this camera because it's a good all-around hybrid camera. It takes stills, very sharp images, but you can also shoot in 10-bit and use the great image of the Sony. And I've thought about getting other cameras in terms of, because obviously there are better video-based cameras in the Sony system, but I also like to take stills, and I also have a Blackmagic 6K, and so those two cameras I think cover each other in some sense. And I also like to take stills, so especially if I'm doing events or other projects, it's always good to have the ability to take really high quality images as well. And in this project I also use the Zhiyun crane, so it's the gimbal, and I'll put the link in the description in terms of this gimbal. I mean, some people, the thing about gimbals, right, is it's harder to kind of run and gun in some sense when you're using a gimbal, but it's also when you really want to get those smooth shots and kind of up the production value, it's obviously very handy to have a gimbal. And in terms of this project, what I shot is in vertical. So what I just did is simply turn my camera, because I have a cage on it, and so it allowed me to put the camera onto the Zhiyun crane vertically. In the past, would have shot a lot of my content horizontally, and the footage with this project, I've obviously used my Blackmagic, and I created it horizontal for the whole actually 6K. These are the main settings that I use, and from my research, that these are the best settings to use for best quality in terms of getting the most maximum dynamic range. So 4K, AVC, and H.264 and 10-bit, that's going to give you the best image quality in terms of on the Sony A7IV on the sensor. And then what I do is I shoot in S-Log3. So in terms of my on Sony, it's the picture profile 8. And I will also put in the video here some of the settings I use within that picture profile. So in terms of the frame rate that I use when I shoot the Instagram story, usually I'm going to be using the 24 frames per second and 4K, and the S-Log3 settings, and using the highest video quality. And in order for me to do that, I will use using my 128 gigabyte, which is 300 megabyte per second video card. Typically that can record, it depends on whether it's 24 frames per second or 60 frames, but it usually allows a fair amount of recording in terms of the video. I also sometimes shoot in 60 frames, and slow it down to the 24 frame per second timeline. In Instagram, my understanding is that I think the algorithm or the upload engine prefers 30 frames per second from my understanding, but typically I would find 24 frames per second, usually typically seems more cinematic, and it does a fairly good job. So in terms of post-production, once I have the footage and the video, my typical workflow in terms of color grading is to upload the footage into Final Cut Pro, and I use adjustment layers to, typically I'll have about 4 to 5 adjustment layers over top of my footage. And the first adjustment layer I'll use is Colorista, and I'll apply an S-Log3 to standard color, color space conversion to the footage, and I'll link in the description the actual LUT that I use in order to do that. But what Colorista allows you to do is it allows you to apply a LUT, but then also color grade, and you can apply, your own S-curve adjustments to the footage, and you can adjust the contrast as well. And in terms of my workflow, I typically will be using Maxon One, and I find their suite of tools allows me to do many adjustments to the footage. So again, I'll talk more about the different adjustment layers I use, but again, I'll usually start with the Colorista on the first adjustment layer, and then once I've done some of the color adjustments, then I'll add looks, so Magic Bullet looks. And Magic Bullet looks is allows you to obviously provide a look to your footage, and so that's why it's usually typically, at least in my workflow, comes second in terms of what is the overall mood or feel am I going in terms of this footage. And so what Magic Bullet looks gives you is many different presets that you can apply to the footage, and so typically I'll add that, and then I'll usually tone it down in terms of usually it's a bit too much. Obviously less is more in terms of how you want to color grade your footage, and I'm usually in between 20 and 30%, but sometimes I'll go up to 40 or 50, but yeah, that's depending on the footage, right? I'll also add Mojo, so that's through Magic Bullet looks as well, and Mojo gives you an overall film look and does a great job, I would say, of providing that kind of cinematic look that people expect. But usually it's obviously way overblown, but I'll usually keep it within flat if I'm shooting in flat. So, and then I'll be usually putting between 20 or 30 depending on the project. But again, that's usually goes after looks, after I've done my original adjustment using Magic Bullet looks. And then the final adjustment layer that I apply is just the renoiser in Magic Bullet looks, and that allows you to add additional noise to your footage. And typically, because I'm uploading to Instagram, they have a feature within that plugin to it says compression proofing, so you can select that, and that I think does probably a really good job in terms of preserving the quality, but also allowing noise to be added. This is a good way to because you do want to obviously maximize the upload in terms of the quality, and I think there's always a trial and error of what works. And just to recap, so in this video we covered pre-production, so we talked about how you can plan and organize your reference material and your assets for the project, and also how you can come up with original creative briefs using ChatGPT and Whisper app, as well as different apps on the Mac, so that you can organize your footage and your assets to prepare yourself for the project. So I hope you enjoyed this video. We covered many different topics in terms of pre-production, production, and post-production. And if you did like this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks, and have a great day.